Good morning. Welcome to Pathways Podcast. I'm Aaron Groves, and we have a sort of unique episode this morning. We did a remote podcast last week, and we are playing it this week, and it's all about religious freedom in schools. We've been approached by a number of you, students and staff within the Newton school system, wanting to know, what are your rights? What are you legally allowed to do to express your faith within the schools? And so we didn't want to give you an answer that was unconstitutional. We didn't want to do anything that would subject you to disciplinary action. So we worked with the First Liberty Institute and got an interview with one of their attorneys. And so many of the questions that you have approached the church with, I sat down and discussed with one of their attorneys and got some clarity on what you are allowed to do as a staff member at the school, during school hours or at school events. Even if you're a coach or a volunteer, what does that look like? But also as a student, what are you allowed to do? And so my hope is that this episode provides clarity for you as a potential staff member within Newton Schools or as a student at Newton Schools. And we want you to be able to freely express your faith in Jesus Christ at the school district and do it in a manner that's, again, legal and according to school policy. And so I hope you enjoy this episode of Pathways Podcast. Good morning. Welcome to Pathways Podcast. I'm Aaron Groves, and I have a very special guest with me this morning, Holly Randall from First Liberty Institute. And she's going to be talking to us and informing us, for those of us that are in the workplace, specifically working in schools and even students in schools, like, what are your rights? What do you have the freedom to be able to do when it comes to expressing your faith at school? And so, Holly, thank you for joining us.
Of course, I'm happy to be here. Love to talk about this.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what does First Liberty do?
Yeah, like you said, my name is Holly Randall. I am associate counsel at First Liberty Institute, which just means I'm a lawyer that gets to fight day in and day out for religious liberty of people in America. So First Liberty is the nation's largest legal organization dedicated exclusively to defending and restoring religious liberty for all Americans of any faith. So we're so excited to partner with groups like you to help educate people, because what we do as lawyers depends a lot on people like you knowing your rights and knowing when you can stand up on your constitutional rights and knowing when you can speak about your faith at a place like a public school. So I'm excited to be here with you guys today.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing what you do. What you do is very important, and it allows us as Christians in America to be able to express our faith and to share biblical truth with others without fear of persecution. And so we're very fortunate to have you in that spot. Okay, quick question, just for you personally. What's the most enjoyable part of your job?
Oh, I love doing stuff like this. I love getting to educate people. I think I was kind of a nerdy kid that loved history and reading and always wanted to be a lawyer. And I get to do a job where I can put all of that together and I can talk about, what the meaning of the Declaration of Independence means for us today. And, I grew up in Oklahoma, or for people in Iowa and students. And so I think it's just, I get to nerd out and then I get to tell other people about it. And so I love getting to do that.
Nice. So it's technically not even work. It's like just, something you get to do and enjoy.
Exactly. I very much believe that I have the best job of anyone that went to law school. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I'm going to get into some questions, if that's all right. And these questions are actually coming from school district staff and students here in Newton. Our church has been approached by staff and students just saying, hey, what are we allowed to do? What are my rights? Because I feel like maybe I'm getting singled out right now because I'm a Christian and I'm not allowed to do certain things, but I think I am allowed to do them. So I actually collected some questions from them and just some feedback from students as well. And so I'm just going to go down some questions and let you answer, and hopefully we can get some clarity to people in our community.
Yeah.
So overall, what are the rights of school staff when it comes to expressing their faith during work hours?
So I'll start kind of at the really broad principle of, I'm not aware of the facts of all of the
Hmm.
situations that we'll encounter here. And so anything I say, don't take as like the legal truth, take
Okay.
as sort of a generalized principle. And that really starts with this baseline that the Supreme Court set years and years ago, before any of us were alive, that says students and teachers do not shed their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse gate. So this comes from an era of protesting the Vietnam War. Students in their schools wanted to wear sort of protest items at school, and teachers were telling them no. And the Supreme Court, it goes all the way up, years of litigation, and they basically said, unless it is a material disruption, that you don't lose your First Amendment rights.
Mm,
So public school teachers, public school students, everyone still has those full protections of the First Amendment. Now, there are limits, of
sure.
course. And some of those are going to involve something you'll hear me say a lot when we're talking about teachers, the word capacity.
Mm,
So, what capacity is the teacher acting in at the moment?
hmm.
Are they speaking for themselves as, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson or Mrs. Smith or whomever, that loves to watch Hawkeye football and attends church on Sunday? Or are they speaking as Mr. Johnson or Mrs. Smith, that is your fourth hour math teacher? And they're
Gotcha.
standing in front of the board saying, 2 + 2 = 4, um, whatever. I'm obviously not a scientist. I became a lawyer, so we've exceeded my math and science knowledge just there with that statement. But that's the most important question. So,
Okay.
what are the rights of a teacher? What are their First Amendment rights when they're at school? All of them within reason. They just have to know that they need to be treated sort of fairly and identically as a teacher that does not have a faith would.
Mm,
So, if a math teacher wants to use the cafeteria during maybe before school hours, after school hours, to host a prayer group of some other teachers at the school, maybe they want to get together and pray before.
hmm.
If the school would let, a science teacher gather with other chess lovers and play a game of chess in that same space after school, then they can't exclude the teacher that wants to have a Bible study in that space simply because it's a Bible study.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. So it's all this question of, are you being treated the same as someone would be if what they were trying to do had a secular, non-religious purpose?
Gotcha. Good to know, and we'll keep capacity in mind as we move forward here. One of the things in our school district specifically that's come up is this idea of religious artifacts being displayed um, in the teacher's classroom. Um, and for us, that okay, where does that stop? So if you're saying I can't display a cross on my wall or on my desk, what about on a necklace? What if I have a tattoo of a cross? Am I allowed to wear a shirt that says Jesus on it? Um, and 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 I would ask, and this would be in the capacity as a teacher, because obviously an artifact is with you all day. It's an
Sure.
immovable object.
Sure. So I'll start giving you another case example of Coach Joe Kennedy. He was a football coach. He was one of our clients, and he wanted to pray on the 50-yard line after football games. And so the capacity question is going to come back into play here. And the Supreme Court, Coach Kennedy lost his job. He did the same thing those people in Tinker did, took it all the way to the Supreme Court, a lot of years of litigation. And the Supreme Court said, when Coach Kennedy wanted to take a knee and say a prayer, he could have been taking a knee to make a dinner reservation on a phone app. He could have been taking a knee to do sort of any other secular thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's essentially my answer to that question. Now, that sounds like a weird thing because you were talking about cross necklaces and table desk displays.
Right.
So, if we pretended that I was in a classroom here, and you can see I've got some boring diploma stuff on the wall, I've got some little pretty things back here, a poster over there. If I was a teacher in a classroom and I wanted this to be a cross, or I wanted this to be, a Bible verse, um, I should be allowed to do that, but only if the school also would allow this to be, if I wanted to hang a picture, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, if I would hang a Dallas Cowboys poster up.
Sure.
So it's the same kind of thing I mentioned earlier of, are they letting other people do it for non-religious purposes? Is there a rule that says no necklaces? Because if there is, then the teacher probably can't wear a cross
Right.
necklace. If I am able to, get dressed and put a necklace on in the morning, if this happened to be a cross, I can wear that so long as the dress code isn't, no jewelry.
Right.
If it's a t-shirt type of situation, if I want to wear a church shirt, maybe a volunteered at camp or something, and if it's a Friday and the school would let someone wear an Iowa State Cyclones shirt, then I should be able to wear my church shirt as well.
Right.
So it's always comes back to this question of, what are they letting other people do, essentially?
So a school cannot create, if I'm understanding correctly, they cannot create a rule in their SOP that would say apparel cannot include religious wording or pictures if they're allowing Iowa Hawkeye or Iowa State Cyclone shirt to be worn. Is that how, do I understand that correctly?
Right. They can't make rules essentially that single out or target religious expression in a negative way.
Okay.
If they're doing, there's the boring lawyer words. We're going to talk about forums and traditional public forums and things like that. If they're creating this opportunity, if the policies allow for creative expression, they can't single out religious for sort of negative disfavor.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. What about, so two staff at the school are working in capacity, and they are having a hard day. They're both believers and they want to pray for each other. Are they allowed to pray for one another if it's a mutual willingness to do so?
Sure. So that again comes back to our classic question. If students are sort of, maybe it's a passing period, maybe the kids have left the room to go to PE, two teachers could be discussing the weather. They could be discussing, the latest sports news. They could be discussing, what they saw in a movie last weekend. The school can't say, just because this private conversation that you guys are having at an appropriate time concerns religion, you can't do that.
Gotcha.
If they want to say, hey, I went and saw the new, whomever movie, and then, they also want to say, well, let's pray really quick before students get here. If they have that time,
yeah,
if it's permitted conversation at that time, you can have it just as much as you can talk about, man, it's really rained a lot lately.
Perfect. Now, when it comes to students, staff or student teacher relationship, it's my understanding that teachers cannot force a religion or force a student to do anything. But what if the student approaches, so maybe they know, maybe to go to church with the teacher, and they are a youth leader or something like that outside of school, and the student approaches and says, hey, I'm having a really hard day. Would you pray for me? My dad's sick or whatever. If the student opens that door, is the teacher allowed to walk in it and do that?
That's a little stickier. I think
Okay.
you've kind of identified that in the intro to the question. So, like you mentioned, teachers and school staff can't ever sort of coerce students into religious expression. They can't, sometimes the word is promote, but that's kind of tricky. So, they can't promote religious expression. But it always will come back to what is the capacity. I know I sound like a broken record, and I'm doing exactly what lawyers do. I'm saying the same words over and over, and I'm saying things like, it depends, but it really does.
Yeah.
If this is, the teacher is walking out to their car, the day is over, a student comes out for soccer practice, and they know that teacher, and it's not, in sort of that classic classroom environment, I will use the word may be acceptable.
Okay.
That's something that there's potentially could be pushback on. So it really just, that one, like I said, is a little stickier as far as the law as it is right now.
Gotcha.
It's always going to be a question of people draw that capacity line at different places. And so that one, maybe I would err a little bit more on the side of caution of just being careful about what in time and what environment teachers are in.
So I think another example of that would be, a lot of times you see sports teams after a game circling up, sometimes both teams together, Um, are coaches and volunteers allowed to not necessarily lead the prayer, but are they allowed to be there with them if it's student led?
You're very much zeroing in on the right words there. That's student-led, student-initiated.
Yeah.
That sort of has to be the case about it. Of course, students after a game, if they want to gather with their teammates, opposing team, whoever, it has to be consensual. It can't be that the coaches are forcing them
Yeah.
ever to do it. Students just say, "Hey, I go to church with that guy that I just, knocked heads with on the offensive and defensive line, and now we want to pray."
Yeah.
That's positive. That's great. We want students to do that. Teacher participation, coach participation is again a little stickier.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what is the coach supposed to be doing at that moment. What is the coach's sort of roles in that time? Um, that's kind of goes back to the Kennedy case I mentioned earlier. If he was praying privately, and the Supreme Court blessed that
Mm-hmm.
and said, he could have been making a dinner reservation. I think that is always a safe move to be a teacher or coach on their own, and students sort of doing their own thing. I think we may talk later about student clubs,
Yeah.
and so I'll save a little powder on this reply or on this answer for some of that. But um, a school can't tell a teacher that they cannot sort of bow their head quietly near places. I have a little bit more hesitation just as a lawyer because I'm careful.
Yeah.
And again, because all of this depends, it's all really fact specific
Yep.
on them joining kind of location wise. So I know that's probably not the most guiding answer. It's the classic lawyer, it depends, but that's the state of the law right now.
Gotcha. No, I think that's some good direction for us. I feel like I already know the answer to this, but it's something that we've heard has happened. Can students bring Bibles to school and read them as long as there's no rules about any sort of books being out? So if they're allowed to have a secular book, they're allowed to have their Bible. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. If they're cracking open the Bible in the middle of math instruction and ignoring the teacher and reading the Bible, that could be a
Right.
problem, but that's not a problem as far as it being a Bible. That's just a problem of
You're not paying attention.
that was math class.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's free reading time and the teachers just let students work quietly on whatever they choose, if they let them read books that they bring from home, if you want to read, I'm admittedly out of touch on children's literature. So if a student is reading Junie B. Jones, I think
Yeah.
that's probably maybe still exists. Then there's no reason why a student couldn't also be reading from, religious literature
Sure.
at the same time.
Good info. So let's talk students a little bit, some more. Can and has happened where students wanted to express their faith. They wanted to talk about their faith, and the administration or teacher or coach came back and said, no, you can't talk about prayer. You can't talk about Jesus, even though it's their bio, it's their expression. So, and this even goes for like a post-game speech that's all student led, or maybe even clothing that they wear, or for a picture, or even I think about eye black, like a cross eye
Mm-hmm.
black underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Can school employees restrict the expression of the student's faith?
So the answer is classic lawyer, yes and no.
Okay.
If a teacher gives an assignment that says, write a book report about someone that inspires you, and the student wants to write about the Apostle Paul,
Yeah.
that is perfectly allowed, right? That can't be, as long as that's the criteria, a historical figure that inspires you, the student can do that. If it was, write a book report on some other, and they had 15 different rules, and the student is like, well, I want to write about the Bible, and it has nothing to do with the assignment,
Yeah.
then that's going to be a problem.
Yep.
That's not necessarily a religious liberty claim in a sense. If a student wants to maybe wear eye black that's in the shape of a cross, Uh, it would depend probably on the like Iowa School Sports Association
Yep.
rules about uniforms, but if it's just that I don't like that that's a cross, but I let, someone else do a smiley face or a triangle, I
Yeah.
don't, whatever sort of neutral criteria I may
Yep.
choose, it can't be eliminated just because cross. Uh, some of the speech questions get a little stickier on the
Okay.
facts. If students are preparing something entirely on their own, it's not a publication of the school, um, then they have a little bit more leeway with including religious references. So think graduation speeches, for example, I think is kind of what you're getting toward. Can I mention my faith in a graduation speech? It's possible. It's going to depend on the school's process for how the graduation speakers are approved, or the post-game speakers are approved, or the biographies are approved and published. So there's a little
Gotcha.
more rules in there that sometimes just come down to needing lawyers to look at the facts of, here's the word again, the forum that the school has created.
Gotcha. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So, like for a yearbook, you get to put a quote in a yearbook. And what did you enjoy most about this year? Well, what I enjoyed most was meeting with my friends before school and praying. And the yearbook comes back and says, you can't talk about praying, but they'll allow someone to talk about meeting and, you know, and exercising or meeting and doing, chess club beforehand. So what I'm interpreting is that it should be allowed.
So I'll give you an example of a case actually we had recently here at First Liberty. Senior age students in Colorado got to paint parking spots.
Yes.
And one of our students, you may have seen this
Yep.
on the news, actually, one of our students wanted to paint a religious message. It was a image of Jesus as a shepherd. And excuse me, was told, no, you can't do that because it's religious.
Yeah.
But students were painting whatever else, that they wanted on this parking spot. So we were able to send a letter to the district and say, whoa, hey, pump the brakes. You're letting other students do this secular or non-religious art on their spots. You can't exclude this just because it's religious.
Yep.
So the yearbook question you're mentioning, um, it is going to depend on what parameters the school has set for students in, what they're trying to say. So
Gotcha.
if it's what was your favorite part of the year and someone wants to say FCA and someone wants to say chess club, then all things equal, let's treat everybody fairly.
Yep.
If the school says, here's a list of rules, it has to be this quote and it needs to be this specific instructions, there's going to be a little more stickiness and issue in that legal analysis.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna ask like one more question because I know we're running out of time here. But this has to do with what you referred to earlier about religious groups or Christian groups that gather. When it comes to the school allowing clubs and activities to advertise and to promote their club or their event, if they allow non-religious clubs and activities to do that, whether it's over the PA system or in a newsletter or a poster board up in the school, if they're allowing non-Christian organizations to do that, then they have to allow Christian organizations. Is that correct?
That's right. If the environmental club gets announced over the intercom during school announcements, FCA can be as well. It can't be, we can't say the word FCA in our announcements, but we can talk about chess club.
Yeah.
Those kind of rules aren't going to pass what's called the Equal Access Act, which means like religious or moral, philosophical, sort of ideology-based clubs have to have basically the same rights as secular other non-curricular clubs. So facility use, PA use, advertising, all of those rules just have to apply equally regardless of religious status.
Awesome. Well, Holly, it's been a pleasure getting your expertise and your knowledge and wisdom on all of this. I feel like this is going to provide a lot of clarity for staff and students in our community and maybe even in other communities. Can you tell me, how is First Liberty Institute funded? Because I want to give a plug for you guys on if people want to support your organization, they can do that.
Yeah, I'll give that plug, and then I'll give a plug sort of for you in addition.
Okay.
We are fully donor funded, so I get to do what I do because of the generous donations of people that support our mission at First Liberty, that want to see religious liberty go forth in this country. And so that means our clients never pay a dime. I mentioned Coach Kennedy. He went to the Supreme Court twice, and he did not pay for any of his legal fees,
Awesome.
which is incredibly generous.
Yeah.
The other plug I will give is if you are seeking additional clarity, if people in your community have other questions, check out our website, firstliberty.org. We have a ton of resources for you guys out there called protection kits for students and teachers. And this is basically a short order of everything I just said, sort of very concisely and neatly put together. You can Google those. And that's a great thing to share with administrators or share with people at school, maybe teachers that are nervous about being a sponsor or something. And if you face any pushback, we also have a request for legal help, and that's a great way to get a hold of our legal team. And hopefully we can provide additional clarity there too as well.
Awesome. Well, Holly, we appreciate all that you are doing, and First Liberty, we appreciate you guys and making sure that we can continue to express our faith in the workplace, in the schools, and in our communities. And so thanks for what you do. We appreciate you. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Of course. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Well, that concludes that episode of Pathways Podcast. And I hope it provided you clarity and understanding of what your rights are. And I hope it gives you wisdom and discernment as you move forward in how you're going to express your faith, whether it's at the school or in your workplace or even in your community. And I just want to give a plug to First Liberty. If you go to their website, firstliberty.org, you can get some of those documents that Holly was talking about, or you can support their organization if you feel led to do so. So thank you for joining us for this episode of Pathways Podcast. God bless.